If you asked anyone to talk about the aging process, a lot of people would refer to how you look. They would say, oh, it's wrinkles, it's hair loss, it's the hair going gray. It's the visual signs of aging. Aging starts from within. And actually, if we want to do something about aging, we can't treat it on the outside. It's actually treating it on the inside. So it's looking at what we can do to improve the health of our cells. If you have very high levels of NAD, you get lots of energy production and lots of repair in your cells. So that is a good thing because it promotes cellular health. If you have low NAD, on the other hand, you will have less energy production and you will have less repair and your cells will not be as healthy. One of the most famous hallmarks of aging is...
What's the latest trend? 1 minute you're taping your mouth shut, the next you're supposed to sip a nightly glass of wine or swear it off. Egg yolks are the heroes, then they're the villains. Peptides, weighted vest, creatine for women, the noise never ends. So how do we know what actually works? I am Juliet Hahn, and this is Don't Die Curious. In every episode, I sit down with doctors, innovators, and everyday legends to separate the facts from the hype and uncover what really sharpens the mind, strengthens the body, and fuels the spirit. Stay curious. One good question can change your life forever. Welcome to Don't Die Curious. This is Juliet Hahn, and I'm here with a very special guest, Dr. Nichola Conlon. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Nichola Conlon. And I am really excited about this because there's so much that I'm curious about in this space, especially diving into this space, being at all these conferences, talking to doctors, talking to different people in like the longevity health. My whole thing is mind, body, spirit. Like you can't just take one part of your life and be healthy. And so when I heard you speak, I was like, first of all, I just loved your personality and was like, oh my God, I need to know more and I need to know what you do. But one of the things that I want to really dive into, because I think it's so essential and so much buzz out there, is really about NAD. And I want you to talk about what that is. And then I'm going to get into like the 12 hallmarks of aging, because I think that's really important for people to hear that and know what that is. But let's start. What is NAD and why is it such a buzz right now?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. NAD is something that we've known about as scientists for a very long time, but all of a sudden, everyone seems to be talking about it. It's kind of having its moment and everyone's like, what is it? Why is it important? And the key thing is that NAD is not something that we've just suddenly discovered. It's actually a natural molecule that is found in every single cell in our body and has been since the beginning of time. And the reason that a lot of people are very excited about is because it performs some very important functions in our cells. So it's found in every single cell and it's involved in hundreds of different reactions actually. But the two things that it's most famous for are for energy production. So in our cells, we have these little energy power plants, which are called our mitochondria. And basically what they do is they take the glucose out of the food that we eat and they convert it into all the energy in the form of ATP that our bodies need to function. And NAD is basically a critical part of this production pathway. It's this process that creates our energy. And for anyone that can remember any sort of biology, there's something called the Krebs cycle. And this is what produces our energy. And this is exactly what NAD is required for. The other thing that it's very important for is for driving a lot of the repair processes in our bodies. So our cells are constantly getting damaged, all sorts of things from UV, from the environment, from our diet, from respiration, all sorts of things are damaging our cells. So our cells literally have like this army of repair processes that's going on constantly to try and repair this damage before it becomes an issue. And NAD acts like a fuel to kind of drive a lot of these repair processes. So as a very general rule of thumb, all you really need to remember is that if you have very high levels of NAD, you get lots of energy production and lots of repair in your cells. So that is a good thing because it promotes cellular health. If you have low NAD, on the other hand, you will have less energy production and you will have less repair and your cells will not be as healthy. And the reason it's suddenly become a buzzword is because we now know that as we get older, our NAD declines. So this is obviously not a great thing.
Right. Okay. So many questions. Which, this is why it's perfect for this podcast. Because I know that there's NAD drips, and then you hear, wait, don't do that because you don't know where the NAD is coming from. And as you said, our body produces it. So I know I had an NAD drip, and I remember I got like this crazy tightness in my chin and my neck. And it was right around the time where they were like, be careful what you're doing. And I was like, oh my God, what did I do? Right. Like all of a sudden I panicked for a second. And then I, talked to the person that was doing it, and they're like, no, this is where we're sourcing our NAD. Yes, you have to be very careful where you're sourcing it and all these different things. But then I heard you speak. So then it was like, oh, wait. So I had that NAD drip that like at that conference. And then I heard you speak, and I was like, okay, I have so many questions because as you said, our body naturally does this. And being now in this field that I'm in, I love learning all these things because our bodies are so powerful and people don't think about it. It's like, oh no, we need to add this and we need to add this. And sometimes I don't want to say less is more because that's not also, it really depends on each individual, right? Mm-hmm. So can you take us a little bit through like why people were talking about the NAD drip and then why it kind of, like there's certain supplements that people are saying take and they're not all equal. And so you really need to do your research.
Yeah. So obviously NAD declines. And we know that for a fact now. That's been scientifically proven. And this is a bad thing because if it's keeping all of this energy production and repair switched on in our cells as it declines, it impacts our cellular health. And ultimately that causes damage. And it correlates with many of the sort of signs, symptoms, and experiences that we get as part of the aging process. So scientists said, okay, if we've got this molecule, it's very important in helping us stay healthy as we get older, but it declines as we get older, then why don't we just not let it decline? Can we keep our levels high, or can we top our levels back up if they're already gone low? Because it's estimated that our NAD levels half every 20 years. And this is from birth. So even by the time we're 20, we've lost half our NAD. So scientists said, can we top it up? So to begin with, it was thought that, well, maybe this is simple. We'll just take some pure NAD as a powder. We'll ingest it, and then hopefully it'll go to our cells where it's needed. But unfortunately, it was very quickly realized that NAD is a very unstable molecule. So it just gets degraded in the gut. So it doesn't actually go where it's needed. So you can't actually just take pure NAD in that form. So this is where people started to get excited about NAD IVs. So having these intravenous drips of NAD. And the idea here is that you're bypassing the gut, you're taking this NAD molecule that we've become depleted in, and you are literally infusing it directly into the blood. And again, at the time, it was thought this was the best way because we're getting rid of this bioavailability problem. But now what we know is that not only is NAD a very unstable molecule, but it's also very large and it's charged. And it doesn't actually do anything in our blood, which is where we're putting it when we do an IV drip. It actually needs to get into our cells because that is where all of the mitochondria are. That's where the repair pathways are. That's where everything that NAD interacts with is not in our blood. It's inside our cells. And our cells are very particular about what they let in and out. They don't just let things diffuse freely in and out. Most things, especially not very large charged molecules like NAD, they actually need special channels, which are almost like little doors, that the NAD can go in. And the majority of our cells do not have these little channels to let NAD in. So what happens is this huge amount of NAD that you've infused into your blood gets stuck. And the body's like, oh, why have I suddenly got a large amount of a molecule that is not naturally found in my blood in the blood? This is usually found in the cells. So the body thinks, well, there must have been a trauma. There must have been lots of cells that have broken down and the cellular contents is released. So what we now see is that we get an inflammatory reaction. And for a long time, it was kind of a theory about, is this what's happening? And is this why people feel terrible? When they have these NAD IVs, that the body's reacting to it because it's just not used to having this amount of NAD in the blood. And now there's actually been a clinical trial that has proven that when you do these NAD IVs, it's actually inducing an inflammatory response in the blood. So we now have clinical evidence to prove it. So this was where people started to say, okay, maybe again, this is new science. Maybe that's what we thought was the best way to boost NAD. Maybe it's not. And this is when other supplements came about. So things like precursor supplements. So anybody in the NAD space, or anybody that's researched this or even Googled it will have come across something called NMN. And NMN is probably the most famous NAD supplement. And what this is it's basically a precursor to NAD. So it's like one of the smaller building blocks that your body uses to make the bigger NAD molecule. Because what most people don't realize is that we do not get any NAD from our diet because it's too big. It's not absorbed. It's unstable. We actually make and recycle all the NAD that we need in our cells. We literally have a pathway in our cells with a little enzyme, which is like a little machine that's continuously making and recycling all our NAD. So the idea behind precursors is that if you give the body more of the raw material, so these smaller building blocks that actually can get in the cells, then hopefully this can actually turn it into the NAD molecule. So again, for a long time, scientists thought this is the way forward. The body's run out of NAD. Let's just give it more of the raw material so it can make more. But again, as the science is advancing, we're now learning even more. And we're learning that we actually understand now why NAD declines in the first place. And one of the main reasons is because the enzyme in this pathway that takes the raw materials and turns them into NAD, this actually declines with age. So even by taking things like NMN, you can give the body all of the raw material at once, but if it can't actually do anything with it, this is a problem. So we now know really what you need to do is fix the root cause of the problem and do things to really switch that enzyme back on.
So interesting. Okay. Can you give everyone a little background of what what you studied? Because obviously you're very knowledgeable in this. And I think people love to hear what you studied to then get into this field.
Yeah, it was a kind of winding road of how I ended up doing this. So obviously I am a scientist. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a scientist. My background's all academic research. So originally my PhD was all about the bioavailability of nutrients and drugs. Hence why I'm so particular about understanding how things get through the gut and how they get into cells and where they actually need to do their action. And that naturally led me on a route down the drug development pathway. So I worked in drug development, initially working on cancer therapies, and researching new cancer therapeutics. And about 10 years ago now, I had this amazing opportunity where I got put on a brand new project in the drug development company that was to develop drugs to slow cellular aging. And at the time, longevity wasn't a thing. It certainly wasn't a thing that consumers were talking about or anybody outside the scientific community was talking about. So I was like, oh, okay, this is new, really a drug to slow aging. And even I was very skeptical. But my mission and this sort of, the role I was given within that company was to go away, look at all of the research that showed that, maybe we could reverse cellular aging and maybe that would have a big impact on many age-related diseases that, drugs companies are trying to treat. And when I became immersed in this space, I soon realized how powerful the science was and the potential of this science to actually really change the way that we age and, how we can live these lives that we have now, these long lives, but in better health for longer. So improving what we call our health span. And, yes, I worked in drug development, running these projects, but very soon became a little bit frustrated because what I kept seeing time and time again was that a lot of the molecules that worked amazingly were not patentable by drugs companies because they were already known, or there were supplement molecules, or there were natural molecules. So all of these things that we were researching that worked amazingly were effectively getting put in the bin or in the trash. And then, we would invest a huge amount of money in something that worked half as well. So I left that world back in 2017 and I actually started a supplement company trying to give these molecules that weren't drugs the research that they deserved, give them good, credible science, and actually get some of this amazing science out to consumers so that they could actually benefit from it. So never intentionally thought I was going to work in the longevity space. But now that's exactly what I'm dedicated to doing.
Right. And I think when we met, and I mean, I always love to let people hear a little bit about people's journeys, because I think so many people put themselves in like a box and are like, okay, well, this is what I'm meant to do because this is what I studied, or this is what, my path is supposed to be. But a lot of times our path is supposed to be taking us in a lot of different directions. And if we just stay curious and really just follow it, you never know what's going to happen. And one of the things that you said that really fascinated me was about the molecules that were being thrown away. Mm-hmm. And you said, you went and were like, well, why? I don't understand why they can't be used. And the answer you got, you're like, no, I need to continue to research this and look into this because there's something there. I love that you just didn't take that and say, okay, well, that's what he said or she said, so I'm going to go with it. You stayed curious. I mean, that's why I think I said to you right there, wait, I need to interview for this new podcast that I'm starting, because that's exactly what it is. There's so many people that don't allow themselves to ask questions or dive into something because someone else that maybe has a different degree or has been in the field longer is telling you, no, this is how it has to be. But when you get a gut feeling or really something sparks something inside of you, it's so important to follow that. So I love that you were like, no, I want to actually do this. And this is so out of your comfort zone, right? You said, I mean, you were in academics. That's like something where you were really comfortable. And it's like, I want to see what out there is more. So people can find you. I just want to let people know they can go to your Instagram, which I think you're very, that's one of your places, and LinkedIn. And that's Doctor, and it's NICOLA.
Oh, no, you missed it.
What did I say?
It's got a H in it. NICH.
Oh
Spell my first name in a strange way.
No, you spell it because I'm literally reading it, and that's my dyslexia. Oh my. So you spell it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no. On Instagram, it's at Dr. So Dr. and Nichola NICHOLA Conlon CONLON.
But how funny is it? I'm literally reading it from here. So now everyone can see when they're like, really? You're dyslexic? Yeah. I can't even read off the piece of this. But you guys can go find, because you give a lot of information about other things, which I love. And that's what I wanted to touch base on right now, is kind of the 12 hallmarks of aging, because so many people don't realize what the aging is. And I have so many friends, being 51, people are like, okay, well, what are you doing? And everyone's asking each other what we're doing. Why do you look so healthy here? What are you doing here? And it's not just one thing. It's so many different things that you have to take care of to really be in the best shape of your life, in my mind. And it's, it's not just going to the dermatologist and making sure your skin is healthy, whether you're doing Botox or whatever, even if you're not doing any of that stuff, but, slowing down the aging in that way, or, making sure you're getting facials and doing these things. It's so much more than just that. It's really mind, it's body, it's what you're eating. Are you drinking enough water? And it's so simple sometimes that it's like, people are like, wait, what? I'm like, I just drink a lot of water. I drink a lot of water. I work out. I don't eat crap. And I do take care of myself in many different things. I stay very active. I work out, right? Because as a 51-year-old woman, it's like, you should be lifting weights now, right? Back in the day, it was like, no, you just need to move your body. Now it's like, you should be lifting weights. You should be doing this. You should be taking creatine. And there's so much out there that it's like, I don't know what to do, or I'm just going to do what feels good. And that's kind of how I follow things. And I've been very fortunate that it's been working. But if you can talk about, the 12 hallmarks of aging, so the listeners kind of have an idea of this, because I don't think so many people really actually know all 12 or think about all 12.
Yeah, I mean, one key thing, and I think a key change that you've touched upon just there, is how we really view the aging process. And for a long time, when I first came into the space, when I said that I worked, researching aging or worked in anything to do with aging, the first thing that anyone would say was, oh, do you develop skin cream? Oh, do you work in aesthetics? Right. Because let's be fair, for a long time, if you asked anyone to talk about the aging process, a lot of people would refer to how you look. They would say, oh, it's wrinkles, it's hair loss, it's the hair going gray. It's the visual signs of aging. And I guess that's not so surprising, because they are some of the things that we actually, visibly see and register. But what we know is that actually everything to do with the aging process does not start on the surface. It starts deep within our bodies long before we actually start to see any of the things that are appearing on the surface, or start to feel any of the physical effects of aging, things like loss of energy, brain fog, and even the age-related diseases. So, the key shift that we're now, as scientists, we've understood for a while now, but I think in the more general public, we're now seeing people really understand that aging starts from within. And actually, if we want to do something about aging, we can't treat it on the outside. It's actually treating it on the inside. So it's looking at what we can do to improve the health of our cells. And this is where the hallmarks of aging come in, because a very big focus in the longevity space has been to try and understand what is actually happening in our bodies, in our cells, that is driving the aging process. And essentially what we now know is over the last decade, it's been found that there are 12 key things that seem to fail or they go wrong in our cells. And these are called the hallmarks of aging. So, I probably don't have time to go into all 12 because that's going to be like a full-on science lesson.
Yeah.
But maybe what I could do is just give you a couple of examples. Maybe it's 4 of them.
Yeah,
and
we'll love that.
I'll actually link it back to skin and what we see as a visible effect as a result of something that's actually happening inside our cells. So one of the most famous hallmarks of aging is DNA damage. So we know that in every cell in our body, we have our DNA. It's the instruction guide for the cell. It tells the cell how to behave. And unfortunately, it's constantly getting damaged. So again, the UV light from the sun, pollution, our diet, our respiration is constantly chipping away at our DNA and actually damaging it. And we have DNA repair enzymes in our cells, and they literally go around looking for any damage and repairing it before it ever becomes an issue. And we actually even realize there was any damage. That's constantly going on inside of us. But what happens is when we're young, that's a very, very efficient process. But as we get older, the DNA repair enzymes seem to get a bit worn out. They just don't work as well. So they're not repairing the damage like they should be. We start to get a buildup of damage. And when our DNA is damaged, this can not only cause mutations that cause things like cancer, but it can also just stop the cell from functioning correctly in many different ways. So again, just think of our skin. As we get older, we suffer much more from things like pigmentation. Now, in our skin, we have special cells called melanocytes, and they are the cells that produce the pigment in our skin. And as they become more and more damaged as we get older, that means that when they are damaged, they actually start overproducing the pigment. So you start to get more pigmentation than you did when you were younger. So this is a classic example of how DNA damage, a hallmark of aging on the inside, is causing something that we're seeing on the outside. And this kind of leads nicely on to another hallmark of aging. And this is something called senescent or senescent cells. Now, again, I mentioned that when we're young, our cells are very good at repairing and they seem to just keep on top of it and fix things before we know it's an issue. But sometimes a cell becomes so damaged that it's kind of beyond repair. And what the body does is it almost sets off an alarm bell saying, okay, this cell is a write-off. It's beyond repair. We just need to get rid of it or shut it down. And actually for the body, it's much easier than to get rid of a damaged cell to just actually put it to sleep. So it puts it to sleep. It stops it from functioning. It stops it from replicating. And as far as the body's concerned, it's kind of dealt with the problem. And for a long time, we thought these cells just sort of sat there quietly, not causing any trouble. But now we know that they don't actually sit there quietly. These cells, we often refer to them as zombie cells because not only are they sitting there asleep, but they're actually giving off a lot of inflammation. And inflammation is incredibly damaging. So it damages the cells and the tissues around. So again, let's just think about what happens in the skin. It's estimated that as we get older, around 30% of our cells in our later years in our skin will become senescent. So this means that our skin cells are sitting there asleep. So not only are they taking up space, but they're not producing the collagen that they should be. They're not producing the elastin, but they're also giving off inflammation that is degrading the collagen and elastin that we do have. So you can soon see how they become very problematic. And they're often referred to as zombie cells. And,
zombie cells, yeah.
You can see why they are referred to that. So this leads to another hallmark that I've actually just briefly mentioned, and that's inflammation. And most people know what inflammation is. We know that in certain circumstances, it's very good. So in an acute illness or an infection or a wound, we need to trigger inflammation to deal with the issue. But what seems to happen is that as we get older, inflammation in our cells is just not quite turned off. So we kind of end up with this situation where we've got low grade chronic smoldering inflammation in our bodies that just doesn't quite go away. And again, that's incredibly damaging. So looking at our skin, what we see is that inflammation on the inside actually results in things like redness and the rosacea that we actually see on the outside.
Right.
So you can very quickly see how some of these things that we are trying, we recognize as signs of aging soon, we're recognizing them on the outside, we're treating them on the outside, but actually the underlying root causes of the problem are actually the senescent cells, the DNA damage, the inflammation that are actually going on in the inside that are causing all the wrinkles, the redness, the rosacea, the pigmentation that we're experiencing on the outside. So if you really want to do something about it, Botox isn't going to cut it. It's going to mask it. You actually need to do things that are going to improve cellular health on the inside.
I love that. Okay. So one of the things, because I know people are going to say, okay, well, what do you suggest? And I know what you suggest, but like, it's everything you talked about. Like if someone was like, okay, I'm listening to this, what is one thing that I can do? Because sometimes it gets overwhelming, right? There's so much that we should be doing. And sometimes when you get too much information, I know how I am. I just get kind of in like paralysis and then I don't do anything. And it's like, I don't know what to do. But if they could do one thing and to make a change in helping these 12 hallmarks of aging, whether it's benefiting them, slowing them down, supporting them, what would be a suggestion that you have?
Okay. That's really hard to give.
I know. Okay. So maybe what came to your head when I said that? What was the first thing that came to your head?
I'm kind of going to split it up because I think that if it was one thing, I'm going to be completely honest. The reason I dedicated my whole career at the moment to studying NAD is because NAD has been found to be the only molecule that impacts all 12 hallmarks of aging. So as NAD levels go down, all of the hallmarks of aging get worse. And as NAD levels go up, all of the hallmarks of aging get better. And that's one thing that as every single human, as we get older, will become deficient in NAD. So it's one of those things where it has such a huge amount of benefit for one single thing. It's quite rare because normally in biology, you have to do multiple things. Not one thing is going to really help. Having said that, I am the first person to say that you should not be taking supplements until you sort lifestyle out. And lifestyle is just so important. Like we cannot underestimate the value of lifestyle. And how I always describe this is that like everybody's looking for a quick fix. Everyone's looking for something from the outside, something to take, something to inject, something to do that's going to, help us or switch on repair or, regenerate, things like that. But our bodies have absolutely everything that they need inside of us already to age well and be young and youthful. Okay. And the way you can see this is, our biology is in there. Our genetics is in there. It doesn't change from when we're young, from when we're born to when we die. We have the same genes. So we have the same instruction guide to switch on all these different repair pathways that we have when we're young that keep us in perfect health. So when we're young, if we fall over, we cut ourselves, we get sick, we bounce back really quickly. We heal. We don't have wrinkles. We don't have pigmentation. We don't have age-related diseases because actually our body keeps on top of everything. It keeps repairing things. It keeps making sure it's in good health. It repairs, it regenerates, it restores. And the key thing is that our body doesn't lose that. It's in there. It just gets turned down. And a lot of things in our lifestyle cause it to get turned down. So when you think about our biology, we have evolved not to live the lifestyles that we're living today. So, we are living a very easy life compared to what our biology is designed for. So, for example, we're going to have 3 meals a day, most people. We're going to have constant access to water. We've got nicely air conditioned or heated houses. We're kind of probably sitting all day. We're not really, doing too much physical exercise. And that is like a modern human problem. And everything in our biology and in evolution is not designed our bodies to live like this. It's designed our bodies to actually be reactive to a little bit of hardship, actually,
right.
Because when we were cavemen and women, we weren't having 3 meals a day. We didn't know when our food was coming. We were going for extended periods without eating things. We were going through extremes of temperature. We were running around. There was a lot going on. And actually, a lot of the repair pathways and a lot of the things that will regenerate and restore our bodies only get switched on when they are needed, when our body senses that there's a little bit of stress. Physical stress, not psychological stress, but when there's energy stress. So when there's a lack of food or nutrients, or when there's a temperature stress, or when there's an energy stress with intense physical exercise. And then all our repair systems kick in. And this is why lifestyle factors such as maybe intermittent fasting, doing cryotherapies, cold plunge, doing sauna, doing exercise. This is where we start to see like why these things are so beneficial, because they're making our body go, oh, can't be wasteful. We need to switch back on these repair processes. So I'd say for although I'd like to say one thing, I would say the one thing is lifestyle, but obviously lifestyle, it covers a huge amount of things, but it's thinking about, how can I activate some of the repair processes that are already very good in my body at looking after me, but just don't quite get switched on.
I love that. And I think that's very simple for someone to really think about. Like those are things that most people can do very tangibly. It's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to do that. Right. I know for myself, when I wake up, I get outside, I look at the sun, even in even whatever, it's like, that's what I do. And I did that naturally, but that's so important and so good for us. And then I do work out. Like I walk my dogs and then I work out. And that's like something that I do for myself. That's not just for my physical. I do that a lot for my mind. And a lot of people will always ask me like, how do you stay so disciplined? And it's not, it's like, if I don't do that, I can feel it in my brain. And so I'm like, I need to do that for my own kind of mental health. And everyone can find that little kind of sweet spot, what that is. But moving your body doesn't have to be spending a ton of money on it. It doesn't have to be this big ordeal. You can do it pretty easily at wherever you are, walking up the stairs a little faster, like picking up your laundry and being intentional when you're doing it, cleaning the house, but being intentional, and intentional meaning thinking about your muscles, thinking about what you're doing. A lot of people just go through life with no intention. And when I do things, I'm like, what am I doing here? And it's not that I'm overthinking things. I just like to think how my body's working and what's working. It's just the way mine works. Obviously, don't die curious. It's kind of a perfect thing. But I love everything you said, because it just gives a lot of people some information that they can take and do their own research on, because there's so much buzz out there. You have the credentials, you have, the studying, but you've also had the real life work in doing it because you've been so hands-on in this space. And really, I know when we talked some of the conferences and the people that you've met, I was like, oh, that's so interesting. We're not going to get into it, but you have been in this longevity space for a long time, behind the scenes and then in the front of the scenes and kind of immersed in the scenes. And so people can really take what you said and run with it. So that's what I want you guys that are listening. I really want you to think about different things that you can change and take the information that Nichola said and run with it and really use it. So I so appreciate you joining Don't Die Curious. And I'm so happy that our paths crossed. And I know they're going to cross again and more. And we will have you back on, maybe for another season to really break down those, get really into the hallmarks of aging. But I know people can also follow what you're doing because you talk about it a lot. So, if you guys want more information, definitely go check out what Nichola is doing. And again, thank you so much for joining Don't Die Curious.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad that our paths crossed. So you guys don't forget, you know what to do. Rate, review, and share. But share because you don't know who needs to hear this. You don't know who's sitting around being like, how can I be healthier? What can I do? These are very simple tips, even though they are very complex in your mind when you think about the cells and biology and all that. But just do a little research because knowledge is power. So we'll see you for another episode of Don't Die Curious. Thank you for listening to Don't Die Curious. If this episode sparked a question, leave a review and share it with a friend. You want to connect or suggest a topic? Just look me up. I am Juliet Hahn on Instagram and LinkedIn. Until next time, stay curious and keep asking those questions. You don't know where it's going to lead you.